The Delta variant prompting new reconsiderations of COVID guidance around the world, stories of heartbreak and survival in Surfside, Florida, and a retail resurgence, how a one-time bankrupt brand made a comeback with a little help from teens on TikTok. Wednesday Need to Know, let's go. Good morning, this is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Wednesday, June 30th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Jill. How you doing over there on this hump day?
I'm okay. How are you? Surviving the heat?
Yeah, living the dream over here. I got a hot apartment. I've got a baby that does not sleep. I've got a colony of ants that have decided to make my kitchen their home that I'm doing battle with. But all is well. All is well.
I hate even complaining about the heat here in New York, given what's going on in the northwest part of this country right now.
Yeah, it is brutal, though. It's just brutal everywhere. This summer, man. It's not even July.
All right, well, let's start on that happy note with the pandemic, which is still going on, even if you may be totally over it. Moderna now saying that its vaccine is highly effective against the Delta variant, days after Pfizer's vaccine also shown to offer strong protection against the more contagious strain. Provided, of course, that you don't skip the second dose. Efforts to bring back mask guidance gaining steam in some places after both the World Health Organization and Los Angeles County now urging people to mask up regardless of their vaccination status. Even Israel is reinstating mask mandates for public indoor spaces and large outdoor gatherings, despite having one of the best vaccination rates in the world. About 80% of Israeli adults are vaccinated. We are not even close to that here in the United States. So I just feel like it's good perspective as we think about what could potentially be to come. And that Delta variant, I know we use now the Greek alphabet. That is that variant that first ravaged India. And you saw what it did to that country. And pretty much anywhere that it's spreading right now, it's becoming the dominant strain rather quickly.
Yeah, look at Australia. There's now 4 cities in that country that are under new lockdowns. Malaysia just extending its national lockdown. It's really gaining steam in sort of the Asia Pacific region. It's notable, though, to me, Jill, that the CDC is still silent on this. They have not changed their guidance. This is the CDC we're talking about, right? What do we always say? The CDC tells you not to eat, scrambled
cookie
eggs, right? Cookie dough. So if they're not changing their course, I think that's important. But again, the bottom line remains, if you're fully vaccinated, you are very unlikely to get COVID, whether it's the Delta strain or another strain. And if you are unlucky enough to get one of these breakthrough cases, it is very likely to be asymptomatic or at least very mild. Again, I know we say that all the time, but it just can't hurt to keep pounding the table on that. If you're not vaccinated, you're probably eventually going to get this virus at this point. And hopefully it works out for you. Frankly.
Look, it's basically, it feels like it's going to shape up to be a tale of two pandemics, at least in the United States, where states that are highly vaccinated will do relatively well and okay with whatever strain comes, as long as it doesn't mutate too much. But places, especially in the South, where the vaccination rates are extremely low, there's ample opportunity for the virus to spread. I also wanted to point out Abu Dhabi actually banning unvaccinated people from most public places. So unvaccinated people not allowed in shopping centers, restaurants, gyms, museums, theme parks. They are allowed in the supermarket and allowed to shop for essential goods and things like that. But about 93% of their population that's eligible for vaccines apparently is vaccinated there. So just another effort, I guess, to convince that last 7%.
Well, I think it also shows you what you can do when you have sort of like an authoritarian government.
Right? I mean, obviously, that would never happen here.
Yeah.
Turning to the latest from Miami now, the rescue teams at the site of the Surfside condo collapse holding out hope that they can still find survivors amid the rubble as the 24/7 operation enters its 7th day. The death toll now standing at 12, with 149 people still missing. The Surfside building official who signed off on the building's condition back in 2018 has been placed on leave. President Biden and the First Lady are going to be visiting the area tomorrow. Carlo, these first responders have been working day and night for almost a week now, and they've barely scratched the surface when it comes to removing debris.
Yeah.
Did I mention this yesterday? The IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, they've sent crews there. And one interview that I was watching that gave me a little hope, just even as kind of a viewer, is they said, they went to cover the earthquake in Haiti too. They helped, they went to help in the recovery efforts there. And they pulled a survivor out 10 days after the earthquake.
I remember that.
So it's not
that.
common, but it can happen. So they are still saying that there is hope.
Here's hoping. I mean, there's more stories emerging now by the day, by the hour, really, about the survivors, including this one from CNN that I thought was astounding. A woman named Ileana Monteagudo. I hope I pronounced that right. She was 64 years old. She told CNN about how she essentially outran the collapse down 6 flights of stairs from her apartment, watching the walls crack as she fled. Just imagine that. And there are also just heartbreaking stories in the local media and the national media about the victims of the confirmed victims. One of those victims, Marcus Guara, he was 52 years old, a South Florida native, devoted dad to 2 young daughters who remain among the missing, along with their mother. So this is just really an unimaginable tragedy. And it, I don't want to say that it's not getting the coverage that it deserves. I mean, we've been talking about it for almost a week, and it is leading with the national newspapers. But I almost feel like if this were happening in like New York City, this would be almost like a bigger story. Do you feel that way, or am I wrong there?
I don't know. Scott Galloway on the Pivot podcast that we both love, friend of our pod, doesn't know he's friend of the pod. He actually made a point that I thought was interesting. A different angle to this story is he was saying, like, this feels like it's America failing. This is not the type of thing. You don't see buildings buckle and pancake in the United States of America. And his point was, what does that tell you? It's like we've lost our way in terms of investing in infrastructure, in making sure buildings are safe, in roads and bridges. And he was just tying it kind of back to the middle class, which is really, his point, who's affected the most by this type of thing. I thought that was an interesting angle, because it is not the type of story that buildings don't typically collapse. It's unprecedented here in the United States.
Yeah. I haven't heard, was that on his podcast or in his newsletter?
That was on the podcast.
I'll check that out today.
Podcast that I just listened to, actually. And it made me think twice. I know we were talking yesterday about just sort of this given that, look, horrible things happen, but it is a given. You'd like to think that the building that you're sitting in, whether you're working or sleeping or wherever you live, is safe. It was built properly.
Well, not only that, but the building that you paid $1 million to live in, right?
Totally, and to that end, I mean, I park my car in a garage that's underneath a building in New York City. And the elevator on a good day makes me nervous. Like the elevator to get from the parking garage up to the first floor for me to get out. And it's been on the fritz lately. Like the doors take an extra minute to shut, and it's a slow, crazy elevator anyway. And today when I went in, I'm by myself. It's 5 a.m. and the doors are like opening and shutting and opening and shutting. And I'm like, I can't, in good conscience, get in this elevator. It's like so I walk this long way around, which is why we're a little bit late today. But I don't know. It's like you don't expect this thing to happen. It's something you take for granted. Again, that just the bridge you're going to be riding on is not going to fall, and that the building that you're sitting in is not going to crumble. It's heartbreaking, and I hope it does make us reconsider kind of our priorities here.
I mean, we didn't even mention it last week. There was a pedestrian bridge in D.C. that just collapsed a week or two ago. I don't believe anybody was injured, thankfully. It just collapsed over the interstate. I remember years ago there was that awful interstate bridge collapse in Minneapolis. You're right. These things shouldn't happen anywhere, but they sure shouldn't happen here.
Speaking of America failing, Carlo, I know you and Baker were all over the New York City mayoral primaries last week. That race was thrown into complete chaos last night after the city's Board of Elections flubbed the latest reporting of the ranked choice votes. So the Board of Elections reported that Eric Adams, who'd been significantly ahead in the Democratic primary, was actually now hanging on to a much smaller lead with 120,000 absentee ballots still to be counted. Then those results mysteriously vanished from the website, followed by a statement from the board acknowledging that it accidentally included 135,000 test ballots and had to start again. So the retabulated results are expected today. It's really anyone's guess at this point what's going on, but it just, who has faith in this system here? This is total chaos.
And it's more than a New York City story. I mean, you said it yourself, right? America failing. It's not just infrastructure. Like, these are like baseline things that we got to get right. We got to be able to institute elections that people have faith in. This series of events leading to confusion and distrust about the ranked choice voting process. This is the biggest test of that process in America so far, and it's been a disaster. Also, the city's electoral system. Not to get into the weeds on it. This is a specific New York City issue, but the Board of Elections here, complete disaster. It always has been. It's like a case study in nepotism. There's been tons of reports on it. But the ranked choice voting thing just makes everything more complicated, right? Because these geniuses clearly can't even count one round of votes, and they're supposed to be counting multiple rounds because that's how the ranked choice thing works. It's a huge embarrassment. And it's not just New York City, right? The worst thing you can do if you run an election is to slow walk the results, right? To put them out piecemeal, and then you have to walk them back, and then people who look like they were ahead appear to be behind. All of that does is it just gives ammunition to candidates who end up saying that the election was stolen from them, right? It's not just Trump. I mean, there's other candidates in both parties that have sort of gotten on this idea that elections are sort of no longer valid. The last November in the general election, I think it was a little bit of an outlier just because of all the absentee votes, because it happened during a pandemic. But just taken together, it just shows you we really have to reform how our elections are run. I mean, we're playing with fire here.
And the ranked choice, this was the biggest ranked choice voting, I think, in the country ever for an election. Yeah. It's actually a fascinating idea. Did you and Baker talk about just what it is?
Briefly, yeah. But we could, yeah.
I mean, I'm not really an expert on it at all. I would want to read in before we really dug into it. But it is a way for potentially, one of the issues in this country in terms of our process in terms of how we elect people is we tend, because we have this primary system where we have two parties and we have primaries, and usually in the primary the most left wing or right wing of that party are the ones who tend to go out and vote.
Right.
So you don't necessarily get these moderate candidates that are winning or even getting the nomination. And so ranked choice is one way, a little bit of a way around that potentially. So I don't know. I don't want to get too much into it, but it's just it feels like this was being touted as such a huge success story for ranked choice voting, but it was
I don't think we're going to see it
botched.
Yeah, I think this may
don't
be
know the future.
beginning. Yeah, grand opening, grand closing, as Chris Rock said. I think this may be the beginning and the end of ranked choice voting. But you are right. That's the idea. The theoretical idea behind it is that it gives people sort of more of a say, right? Because you rank your candidates. The problem is what's happening now is that somebody who appears to be in the lead ends up not being in the lead, and then people are like, well, what the hell, man? This guy got the most votes, and he's not going to win. Well, we'll keep on it.
Look, if Eric Adams winds up not coming out on top, I would imagine that they're going to force some type of recount, because it just feels like these results are too all over the place.
Yeah.
Overseas, the U.S. military commander in Afghanistan warning that the country could soon devolve into civil war once American boots are off the ground for good. General Austin Miller held a rare press conference from Kabul as the Pentagon's expected to complete the withdrawal in the coming days. Several hundred troops are expected to stay behind to guard diplomatic facilities and the international airport.
This is just a good opportunity for me to flag something I had been meaning to mention all week, and thank you to the couple of listeners who nudged me on this. This happened on Friday, right after I was complaining about the White House's lack of loyalty to the 18,000 interpreters, drivers, fixers, and some of the other support staff, the Afghan people who provided American military support over the last 20 years, many of whom faced basically certain death at the hands of the Taliban once the U.S. Troops are out of there. So the House has now passed a bill to speed up the visa process for those folks to immigrate to the United States. Biden saying on Friday that he supported evacuating these people and promised, quote, not to leave anybody behind. So all of this is good news. We got to keep an eye on this. This is a big deal. It's very important. But credit where credit is due to the Biden administration and Congress for at least appearing to find religion on this issue, because I just think, this is bar none, something everybody can agree on, that these people really deserve our protection.
The speed of the rebound in post-pandemic air travel, forcing the airline industry to stake its bets on the future. United Airlines placing its largest order ever for new planes, 270 aircraft, and that's going to be split between Boeing and Airbus. There's also plans to create 25,000 unionized jobs by 2026 as it increases its domestic capacity by 30%. So this new fleet of planes is going to have more premium seating, bigger overhead bins, and faster Wi-Fi, and notably Bluetooth support for in-flight entertainment, which has always been a big complaint of frequent flyers who want to use their AirPods or noise-canceling headphones to watch something. United CEO says the airline is betting that business and international travel will come back 100%. That's a bold statement, Carlo.
That was my take. That is a big bet. I don't know if I would make that bet. I think it is true that the rebound in leisure travel has been nothing short of astounding. I was just looking at the TSA data. We're nearly back to 2019 levels in terms of how many people are going through TSA security every day, which is astounding when you think about it. Business travel, though, that's another ball of wax. I mean, I don't know firsthand since we don't travel really in our jobs, but I'm interested to hear people's observations if they are in jobs where there's a lot of travel, whether their bosses are telling them to get back on planes or if they're going to try and do more of it over Zoom. It seems to me like there just has to be a change in business travel because of just the cost effectiveness of how much we can do online now.
And business travel is so key for these airlines because it's usually booked potentially at the last minute. When you're charging something to your company, you may not be as conscious of cost. Right. So that's eventually going to be a huge thing. I'm very happy about more overhead room, the overhead bins having more room. It is like my biggest stress factor when I get on a plane. Is there going to be room in the overhead bin for my bag? So that's good.
You know what the trick there is? We should do this actually, I want to save that for Love Hate 8. I have a good
Just
Love Hate 8.
Tell us.
Okay. Check your bag. Just check your bag. You will that stress factor will just melt away. Just do it. It's like what I said the other day about how you should just make 2 trips. Just deal with it and make 2 trips when you're bringing the groceries in. Just go into the airport and be like, you know what? I'm going to check my bag and I'm just going to not worry about the overhead bin.
I thought of you the other day because I forget where I was, but I needed to make 2 trips and I was stubborn and I didn't. And I was like, you know what? I should have taken Carlo's advice because I was like trying to balance 100 different things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, Carlo, when was the last time that you stepped foot inside of an Aeropostale? If I'm even pronouncing it properly, I'm thinking back to my youth. The shopping mall stalwart of the late 90s that went bankrupt 5 years ago. Hot once again, thanks to some shrewd marketing and a social media campaign laser focused on Gen Z. Aeropostale saying that its crop tops have been flying off the shelves, lifted by this viral TikTok trend of girls showing off their favorite hashtag tiny tops. Aeropostale also going big on denim. Literally, the company said it realized early that young consumers had no interest in skinny jeans, so that company pivoted hard to the baggier styles that now make up the brand's top category.
Crop tops and skater jeans, Jill, our childhood back once again. The chief merchandising officer of Aeropostale telling one of the retail trades, quote, I thought this was a great quote, "You just don't see girls in tight jeans anywhere anymore," end quote, which is definitely true, at least in Brooklyn, at least in New York City. I don't know if anybody else is fascinated. I'm fascinated by retail trends. I feel like maybe I should have calling was in like merchandising or something. I just think it's so funny and so wild how things are hot and then they're not hot and then they're back to being hot again. We were all about skinny jeans, Jill, at least us elder millennials. Now the next generation, all about the sort of baggy skater jeans. It's probably going to be back to skinny jeans once little Franny is a teenager, right? Just rinse, repeat, circle goes on.
It'll probably have gone back and forth 100 times from then.
Yeah, right.
I'm not, there's a big debate amongst millennials about skinny jeans, and especially just the sort of faux war between millennials and Gen Zers with not only skinny jeans versus baggy jeans and also middle part versus side part. And I don't know.
Oh,
I
really?
feel like for me, as a like skinny jeans and a side part is so much more flattering than a middle part and baggy jeans. So I'm just
I
sticking
happen to
with,
agree with
what
you.
I'm comfortable with.
Exactly. That's the bottom line here. Whatever works.
There's also this story in the Wall Street Journal style section this week about this resurgence of jean shorts or jorts for men this summer. And they're not like they're like jean shorts that go to the knee.
Yeah. I mean, look, here, jorts are okay if you make them yourself by cutting up your old jeans. I don't think it's something to be purchased in a store, for men at least.
I don't
Women is
think
another
that
story.
men should be making their own jean shorts, by the way. I don't know
yeah.
how I feel about that.
The rule for men's shorts, for me, is always above the knee. The shorter, the better, in my opinion.
I'm picturing you. I'm picturing you with a scissor in your jeans, cutting yourself like Daisy Duke shorts.
No, not that short. Not like so your like butt cheeks are hanging out, but like 3 to 4 inch inseam. That's my rule.
Moving on, Serena Williams exiting Wimbledon in the first round because of a leg injury. Putting her chase for the Grand Slam record on hold once again, Williams appeared to slip and twist her ankle in the first set of her opening match before limping off center court in tears. How heartbreaking. Oh my God.
So what is the next Grand Slam? It's the U.S. Open, I think, right, in late August. So I guess that's the big question if Serena comes to Queens and sort of gets her journey back on track here for this Margaret Court record. But just heartbreaking, Jill, to watch her bow out. She was clearly in a lot of pain. It looked like the court was really slippery. It looks like it could have happened to anybody. She just kind of like twisted her ankle. But I really hope this isn't the end. I'm very invested in her breaking this record. I think it would just be amazing.
I'm totally rooting for her. Venus Williams had this really funny interview that it was going viral on social media. I don't know if you saw it, but basically the interviewers were like, "What is the secret to your longevity?" And she's like, "Can you? That is like, how many times do I have to answer this question? I don't want to answer it anymore. Ask me something else." In a lighthearted way, though. And they're like, "All right, are you dating anybody?" And she's like, "No." I think she's like, "I'm very single. I think I'm just undateable." And it was just so funny. Because I kind of relate in some, or at least that's how I felt for a long time in my life.
It's like when you watch one of the like in-game interviews with an NBA coach, and they're like, "So what's the team's success for the fourth quarter?" And it's like, "Well, we're gonna have to make some baskets and play some defense." Okay, thanks, coach.
Those are always torturous, especially when they're interviewing at halftime when they're interviewing the losing team. You know the coach just wants to get into the locker room, talk to his team. All right, that is, again, I have this image of you in your jean shorts, but that is what you need to know for Wednesday, June 30th.
Sorry we went off the rails there, folks. See you tomorrow.